My name is Khalid, and for most of my life, I believed I was serving God with all my heart. I was born into a world where the sound of gunfire and the echo of explosions were as common as the call to prayer. By the time I was 20, I had joined Hamas. It wasn't just a decision, it was an identity. They told us we were the defenders of truth, the protectors of Islam, the chosen warriors of Allah. I believed them. I believed every word. I carried a rifle like it was an extension of my own body. I memorized the commands of my leaders more than I memorized the Quran. I enforced the laws, not with compassion, but with fear. I thought the fear I put in others was a sign of righteousness. I thought I was securing my place in paradise with every act of loyalty. I never stopped to ask why. I never stopped to question. The only light in my life outside of all this was my wife, Samira. She was my safe place in a world of hate and violence. She was soft-spoken, kind-hearted, and she had a way of looking at me that made me forget what I'd done during the day. We had been married for 5 years, and although life in Gaza was harsh, we made the best of it together. She was the one thing that made me feel human. But one night, that was stolen from me. I had been sent on a mission outside our neighborhood. It was nothing unusual, just another assignment I didn't dare refuse. When I returned home late at night, I knew something was wrong before I even stepped through the door. The house was silent, too silent. Samira was sitting on the floor in the corner of the room, her knees pulled up to her chest, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She wouldn't look at me at first, and when she finally did, I saw a pain in her face that words could not describe. With trembling lips, she told me what had happened. 2 masked men from the same group I gave my life to, had broken into our home. They accused her of speaking to a foreign man on the phone, something I knew she would never do. She had barely been outside the house in weeks, but they didn't care about truth. They tied her up and violated her. They left her there, broken, terrified and bleeding, like she was nothing. As she spoke, I felt a rage boiling inside me, so strong that I could barely breathe. I wanted to find them, to kill them with my bare hands. My vision blurred with fury. But beneath the rage, there was something else, something that scared me more than the anger. A crack in my faith. I had been taught that we were a brotherhood, that we fought for honor, that Allah was just. But where was that honor now? Where was that justice? The next morning, I went straight to my commander, demanding justice. I told him what had happened. I told him I wanted the men punished. He looked me in the eyes and smirked. He said Samira had brought shame on me and that this was her punishment. He said Allah had allowed it. I remember staring at him, feeling my heart turn to stone. In that moment, something inside me died. I realized I had been serving men, not God. I realized that the group I had given my life to didn't care about truth, only about power. When I came home, Samira was quiet. She barely touched her food. She wouldn't meet my eyes. At night, I heard her crying in the dark, trying to hide her tears. I wanted to comfort her, but I didn't even know how anymore. I was drowning inside myself, crushed by guilt, hatred, and doubt. I stopped going to the mosque. I stopped saying the prayers. Every time I tried, my mind would flash to that night, to what she endured, and to the smirk on my commander's face. Weeks passed like this, with both of us living like shadows in our own home. And then one day, as we walked to the market together, trying to pretend life could be normal again, the air was ripped apart by a deafening explosion. A bomb went off just meters away from us. I felt the heat slam into me like a wall. My body was thrown to the ground. My ears rang so loudly, I thought my head would split open. The world tilted, blurred, and then everything went black. The last thing I remember was the taste of dust in my mouth, the muffled sound of Samira screaming my name, and the strange feeling that I was falling into a darkness far deeper than death. When I opened my eyes, I was not lying on the street anymore. I wasn't even sure I was in my body. I was standing in a place so dark it felt alive, pressing against my skin, filling my lungs with something heavier than air. The silence was not complete. Beneath it, I could hear faint cries, low at first, but growing louder until they became a chorus of screams. Not the kind you hear in war for a moment, and then it's over. These screams were endless, hopeless, coming from deep inside souls that knew there would never be an escape. I tried to move, but my feet felt like they were sunk into the ground. Shapes began to appear in the darkness, shifting and writhing. My eyes adjusted just enough for me to see faces. Faces twisted in pain, their eyes wide with terror, their mouths open in endless cries. Flames flickered here and there, but they weren't like any fire I had seen. They didn't light the place. They only burned with a cruel, suffocating heat. I knew without anyone telling me that I was in hell. Then a voice thundered through the darkness, so powerful that it seemed to shake the very air around me. It said my name, Khalid. I froze. I had heard the voice of imams my whole life, shouting sermons from minarets. But this was different. It was not the voice of mercy, it was the voice of judgment. The words cut through me like a blade. You serve the father of lies. I felt my knees give way and I fell to the ground. Images began to flash before me. Every act of violence I had done in the name of religion. I saw the faces of men I had beaten for questioning Islam. I saw women who begged for mercy and were ignored. I saw blood on my hands, blood that I had thought would earn me paradise. Then I saw Samira, her face pale and wet with tears, and I knew my greatest failure was not being able to protect her. I shouted into the darkness, I didn't know. I thought I was doing the right thing. My voice sounded small, pathetic. The voice answered, you followed men, not truth. I felt the darkness closing in, pressing against my chest, choking me. And then, through the blackness, I saw it, a light. At first it was faint, like the flicker of a distant candle, but it grew quickly, brighter and brighter, until it became so pure and intense that the shadows recoiled from it. I shielded my eyes, but I couldn't look away. From within the light, a figure stepped forward. He was unlike anyone I had ever seen. His face shone with authority, yet there was a gentleness in his eyes that pierced me deeper than any weapon ever could. It was as if he could see every sin, every secret shame, and yet he did not turn away. He came closer and spoke. Khalid, I have seen your pain. I have heard the cry you could not speak. I am Jesus, the Son of God. I have come to save you. The moment he said his name, I felt something break inside me. Tears flooded my eyes and I dropped my head, unable to look at him. But I am not worthy, I said. I am a killer. My hands are stained with blood. I've destroyed lives. He knelt down beside me and placed his hand on my shoulder. The touch was unlike anything I had ever felt. Warm, pure, and full of a love I had never known. I died for even you, he said. If you believe in me, your sins will be washed away. I couldn't stop weeping. Around us, the darkness began to stir, swirling and hissing like it hated his presence. Shadows clawed toward me, and I could hear voices, not human voices, screaming in rage. But as soon as they came close, the light from him burned them back. He reached out his hand to me and said, take my hand, Khalid. I did, and the moment my fingers touched his, it felt as if chains I didn't even know I was wearing shattered and fell away. The ground beneath me shook, and suddenly I was being pulled upward, away from the heat, away from the screams, away from the place I knew I deserved to be. I didn't want to let go. I didn't want to leave his presence, but then he looked into my eyes and said, you must return. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them what I have done for you. Before I could answer, the light grew even brighter, so bright that everything else vanished. The screams faded, the darkness dissolved, and I felt myself falling again. This time not into terror, but into something soft and distant. The last thing I heard was his voice, still calm, still full of love, saying, I am with you always. I woke up to the sound of beeping machines and the smell of disinfectant. My body felt like it had been crushed under a mountain, every muscle aching, my head pounding with every heartbeat. I blinked, my eyes adjusting to the dim light, and saw white walls, an IV in my arm, and bandages wrapped around parts of my body. A man in a white coat noticed I was awake and hurried over. He told me I had been unconscious for 2 days. He said I was lucky to be alive, that the blast had killed several people instantly. But I knew it wasn't luck. It was mercy. My first thought was Samira. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and my voice came out as a whisper. Where's my wife? I asked. Moments later, she stepped into the room. Her eyes were red from crying and her face was pale, but when she saw me awake, she froze in the doorway before running to my side. She took my hand and held it like she was afraid I would disappear again. For a long time, neither of us said anything. When I finally found the strength, I told her everything. I told her about the darkness, the screams, the voice that judged me, and the man in the light. I told her his name and I told her what he said to me. "Samira," I whispered, "I saw Jesus. He saved me." She stared at me in silence. Her brows furrowed and I could see she didn't know whether to believe me. But I kept talking, describing his face, his voice, the way his presence drove away the darkness. As I spoke, her expression softened and her eyes filled with tears. She didn't say much, but she squeezed my hand, and for the first time since that night, I felt a spark of life in her touch. After I left the hospital, I knew I couldn't return to my old life. I couldn't wear the mask of a fighter for Hamas anymore. I couldn't shout the words I no longer believed. Walking away wasn't easy. The men I once called brothers now called me a traitor. Some threatened to kill me, but I wasn't afraid of them. I had seen hell, and I had seen the one who pulled me out of it. Their threats were nothing compared to that. I started reading the Bible in secret. Every word of Jesus' teachings cut into me like a blade and healed me at the same time. Love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. Those words shattered the hatred I had been taught to carry. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. I realized how heavy my soul had been and how light it felt now. Samira noticed the change in me. I wasn't the angry, restless man she had lived with for years. I was learning patience, compassion, and a love that didn't demand anything in return. One evening, she asked to see the Bible for herself. She began reading it quietly, and over the next weeks, she would ask me questions about Jesus. Then one night, she closed the book, looked at me with tears streaming down her face, and said, "If he could save you after everything you've done, maybe he can heal me too." We began praying together, not the memorized words we had recited all our lives, but real prayers, speaking to God from our hearts. And slowly the wound inside her began to heal. She still carried scars, but they were no longer the chains that held her down. She found hope again. We had to leave our home. It wasn't safe for us anymore. We left behind family, friends, everything we knew. We became strangers in a foreign land, starting over with nothing but the clothes on our backs. But even in the loneliness, we found peace because we were no longer living in darkness. I once thought I knew God, but I was serving a lie. I thought I was fighting for truth, but I was only spreading hate. It took losing everything, my honor, my beliefs, even my life for a moment, to see the truth. And the truth has a name. His name is Jesus. He is the reason I am alive today. He is the reason my wife is healing. He is the reason I can speak these words without fear. I will never stop telling what I saw because I know there are others still trapped in the darkness I was in. And if he could come for me, he can come for anyone.